Watching News at Prime. Well, South Africa has just concluded marking the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children for this calendar year. The global campaign is aimed at raising awareness about the negative impact of abuse on women and children. Let's speak about this now, and we're joined in studio by the Cool Dads Foundation CEO, Bongani Luvalo, Not In My Name President, Siyabulela Jentile, and we're also joined by actor and activist, Jerry Mofokeng, who joins us via the virtual platform. To all of you, gentlemen, good to have you here for this important discussion. I'd love having this. It's the first time, by the way, I'm doing it. So let's start with you, Mr. Luvalo. You started what is called the Cool Dads Foundation.
Yeah.
And I'm told there was a recent conference that was held.
Yes.
Talk to us about what made you start this initiative in the first place and what kinds of discussions go on when you do congregate.
Thanks. Should I say Xoli, since I heard you said
Xoli is good.
Thanks a lot for this opportunity to converse, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. Look, starting Cool Dads could be 2, if not 3 reasons. One, I grew up without a father. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and always being surrounded by women, and also being in a community where most of the boys, whenever we get into a fight, many of us would not say "Ngisayutshela ubabam" when you are being beaten. Yeah. You know, it's always "Ngisayutshela umamam," you know, or "Ngisayolanda this at home," you know. But boys who've got, you know, a male figure, a father figure, whenever there's a fight and they're being defeated by the other boy, the first words they will utter because of the confidence is, "I'm going to tell my dad."
Yeah.
You know, because of you've got that conviction that your father is supposed to be your protector, is supposed to be your hero, you know. So I grew up in that context, which means majority of the people that I grew up were, you know, surrounded by, you know, either their mothers or grandmothers or aunts, you know, and at some instances, probably an uncle. So I knew and understood that what is the feeling of growing up without a father? And I said, as this generation, we have a responsibility to change the narrative of how kids grow up and how they experience fatherhood. Because within my friends, there are those who say, I grew up with my father in the house, but he was not an emotionally available man. He just paid the fees, he bought me soccer boots, and he read his Laduma newspaper. And that's it. Yeah. Whenever I did anything wrong, my mother would tell him and I'll be beaten, you know. So we never had that emotional connection. He was not there when I played soccer and so on. So we had to change the narrative. And so that's how we had to say, let's start spending time with kids. How do we best do it? Because many of us might be wanting to be dads there, but we don't know how it's done because we don't have the script, you know. So that's how we formulated Cool Dads. And actually at the picnic, it was meant to just be a gathering of male. Instead of always going to a drinking spree together, it had to be, let's start with the kids and then we can go and watch soccer or go to the car wash. Yeah. And when we sat at the first picnic, we then realized that there were men who came without their kids. And when you ask, why didn't you come with your child? And I've separated with the mother of my child. We'd arranged that I'm going to come and collect the child. When I got there this morning, I was told that one out of my little auntie, which means the grandmother or the aunt has taken the child. So he says, this is my everyday problem where I can't access my child. I'm paying maintenance. I'm trying to be there for the child, but there are circumstances. So we had to say there are deeper challenges than just absent fathers. As everyone says in South Africa has got a high level of absent fathers. It's just one blanket of men don't want to be there. Yeah. And actually we had to say, let's try and zoom in and say, what are the problems that are causing men not to be there for their kids?
And let's zoom in into those problems, Siyabulela Jentile, because your organization will often be invited into platforms like this one when a big scandal has broke. A man has killed a woman, and this is someone that is not necessarily not known to the woman who is the victim, but it's probably their intimate partner. What are these problems that men face?
Yeah, thank you so much, Xoli. Good afternoon to you and to Ntate Mofokeng and my fellow panelists here. By the way, good job that you guys are doing. It needs to be applauded by all of us. Look, Xoli, our problems are many. One can characterize them as social, they can be economical, they can be moral. you know, all these Kalis you can think about. But we have found over the years as the Not In My Name movement, because remember we started as a protest movement as a response to the growing numbers of intimate partner violence after the death of Karabo Mokoena being killed in Satellite. And then we wanted men to take collective responsibility. But as time went by, we realized that this is not a problem that exists somewhere in the cloud. We needed to find some root causes of these problems. And again, as I say, that most of them were social. And then we had to look at how do we re-socialize men and boys better, how do we rehabilitate, how do we try and redefine the types of masculinities that are there, that we don't only have hegemonic masculinities that are aggressive. We need to understand who we are as men and what are the challenges and the demons that we are facing. And by doing so, we then realized that we're not going to fight GBV or femicide effectively by continuously demonizing or problematizing men.
Yeah.
We needed to have men as part of the solutions being in the table. And so that's why we support initiatives like this. And then we are saying that men must continue going out there. And so most of our work has been focused not only, you know, to raise awareness on the cases, but in the past we've partnered with correctional services, because our correctional facilities are not rehabilitative in nature. So they need the support and the assistance of civil society. We need to then do that, and we've been doing so. We've also, you know, tried and created safe spaces for men to talk, because a lot of men will tell you, I don't want to be a part of these things because they're calling us all sorts of names. And we are saying we have passed that stage now.
Yeah.
We need to have a dialogue that is inclusive of men, women, members of the LGBTIQ+ community. But over and above that, we need to go back and look at how unemployment is affecting or is feeding into this, how culture is doing so, how religion, what role is religion playing, and how can we conscientize everyone and ensure that we move forward as a collective, fully cognizant of the fact that for us to end this GBV, we must all play our part.
You mentioned unemployment. I'm going to circle back to that,
Sure.
because it's possibly one of the greatest challenges that ferments this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
But let's bring into the conversation Ndate Jerry Mofokeng. Bra Jerry, I'm going to call you Bra Jerry because I'm being called Bra Xoli here. Let's understand from your...
Okay, Bra Xoli, go ahead.
Let's understand from your vantage point, firstly, why you have decided to lend your energy and time to the Cool Dads Foundation. Your face is a familiar one on the silver screen, and so when people see familiar faces that they are used to, they tend to gravitate towards that. What kind of impact are you hoping to achieve?
Xoli, gents, that's all. Thank you for your initiatives. I'm 68, and it's legacy time for me. I don't necessarily need to start a foundation, an organization, and what have you. I need to multiply myself in all the initiatives where I can make a difference. And I should be careful what I say here. Look, it's very easy to march. It's very easy to sign a petition. But to get into a position where, like Patrick Shai, you may his soul rest in peace, you say, I used to be an abuser. I used to have the problem, a streak, a what have you, in this particular area. No more, not in my name. And my wish is that, like the organization, not in my name. It's in the first person, not in my name.
Yeah.
It says, we heal men, we challenge men one at a time. When you've done that, you have affected a family, you have affected a clan, you have affected a community, and hopefully you've affected generations to come after that man, because hurt men hurt others. Too many a time, Zain has told a story about a man who was a mechanic who who always used to beat his son on the chest with the tools. And then they find out his father was a mechanic. He also did the same thing. And so daddy issues of scarred, wounded tigers, generation after generation after generation. Now, we might not be able, Xoli, to give you statistics of how many men we have healed, we have restored, we have encouraged, and we've turned around. But one thing I know, when you go to like the conference Cool Dad's Head, you get into a situation where even I made a resolution about the cultures that I engage myself in. And I ask myself, by the way, have I considered committing suicide? And what was happening when that happened? So Bongani takes very challenging, unnerving, unsettling topics for his conference. And those who do come, I believe, even if it's 10% only, they are going to be soldiers of anti-GBV, of positive masculinity where they go.
Wow. What a powerful contribution. And Bongani, you're going to have to pick up on that because we need to hear from you.
Sure.
He's now completely changed my thought process. I think viewers do deserve to hear some of those unnerving topics, topics that are very uncomfortable by their very nature. But it is still early evening, and so children, we must be mindful, they're probably watching here. So pick carefully what you're going to talk to us about that comes up in these discussions.
I think we had 5 focus areas. One, men in the law. And men in the law, we looked at your customary law. Some of us are still confused if you've paid lobola, are you married or not? We've seen the WHP case and many others, you know, where people have said, I've paid lobola, it was half paid and so on. But also we looked at, you know, sexual violence in the workplace, you know, sexual harassment. Sometimes the comments we pass on colleagues, you know, how they're dressed, we think it's cool because we grew up, you know, whistling at girls when they pass, and we think it's still okay to even take it a notch up and pass a comment and say this, or even hold, you know, her waist, because of culturally we think we've been accepted to do this thing. So
do you think that indeed there are people who genuinely don't know that that is tantamount to sexual harassment when you're going to hold a lady by her waist in a workplace without her permission for her to do that?
There are those who've got that naivety, but there are those who will hide behind their thumbs and say, but we grew up passing these comments. But she also looks at me in this way. We always find a room for justification of our bad behavior, you know, and perpetrators are good at that in whatever, whether it's a thug, whether it's an abuser, whether it's a child that steals sugar, you'll always find, you know, I always say to people, a reason is a reason. It's not a representation of truth or of fact. It's you saying, the reason I wore blue is this. Whether it's because of the sun is really blue or hot outside, it's not a fact, you know, but you'll always give us a reason. So we also looked at, you know, issues of, you know, men's health, that Jerry was talking about, issues of suicide. There are men who have attempted suicide, passed, killed themselves or failed. There are men who have experienced either a partner who kills themselves or attempt to kill themselves. A man who has experienced their own kids attempting suicide, attempting suicide or actually killing themselves. And what puts you, at what mental state do you become after that? You know, how then do you show up at work? How do you show up for family? What effect does, you know, having to experience somebody attempting to do, you know, suicide, you know, put you at? We also had, the last session, we had to have a healing session. Because there's a man who stood up there and said, I was on the verge of killing my wife and myself. But the sound of my daughter's laughter said I can't deny her the opportunity to have parents.
Wow.
And the men wept. So in our last session, we had to have a healing session. I invited one of our guests, his analysis one is a clinical psychologist. And we said to men, it's time for us to forgive ourselves Forgive ourselves for the apologies we might not get from our own parents, whether they were good or bad to us. For the apologies that we might not get from the bad friends that we've had. But also there are things that we have done that we need to forgive ourselves for us to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
You are abusive today because of what you have experienced or what you have put yourself in. Until you forgive yourself, you admit that you have been in this situation and this is how it has affected you, you might not have the power to actually move forward. And I think many of us as men, we need that moment of having to forgive ourselves first before we look into the world.
Siyabulela, I'm sad because time has completely run out, but I've got to allow you to talk to issues of unemployment and how they possibly contribute to the scourge of GBV. And there is a powerful figure that Undata Jerry referred to. I see him genuinely as someone who contributed immensely to this fight. Patrick Shai.
Yes.
Firstly, him coming out and saying, I used to do this. And the tragedy of him taking his own life, I can't come to terms with that. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, one, just to say that Babshai worked with him very closely in the space. We used to call him Fanagiti. You know, he was funky and all that. And it's sad how his story ended. And we then need to say that this is the man who walked this journey with us. And he's had issues, you know, only God knows to what extent. And we need to take the baton from where he left it off and continue the fight. But I want to speak to also the issue of unemployment. It's a reality that we need to face, Xoli, that I'm not saying it's right, but it is happening. There are men who are justifying violence because they feel that is the only way they can exert their masculinity, because they cannot, they cannot contribute monetarily in the family or any other way except for them to be violent, you know, and say, play the victim card that you're disrespecting me because I don't have any income. They are there, and we need to confront that. We need to do that by making sure that men are aware that they don't need to necessarily be violent, you know, in order for them to continue being the men of the house. And we need to also bring the women into the table and say that you don't need to be calling Xoli a loser. Everyone is trying. The economy is very bad. You need to be sympathetic. You need to help and support this man. But again, we need to take it a step further and stop just talking, not doing nothing. There's a project that we've started as a movement. You'll know that Lusikisiki, for an example, is one of the GBV hotspots in the country. Eastern Cape as a province is a mess. So we've started a subsistence farming project initiative for men. They will be giving them water tanks, wheelbarrows, and farming tools. But also we'll use that opportunity as a platform for dialogue around masculinities, resocializing men better, and try to rehabilitate and create a platform for healing, as Bongani was saying. So those are some of the things that these men, they're unemployed, but they can have their own farming projects, not only for self-sustenance, but they can also sell those vegetables. So it's one of the few initiatives that we are currently embarking on. So government must do something. Comrades, we listen to them screaming today. They must do the right thing. ANC must stop, mismanaging state resources and assist men to get jobs. Lastly, only GBV takes billions out of the fiscus every year. KPMG did a report. I don't know if there's the latest one, but around 10 years ago or so, and almost 30 billion is lost to GBV. And so if South African men can understand how that money could have been used to job creation, that money could have been invested in the education sector, that money could have gone into other areas of our country.
Thank you for wrapping that for us. And I'll have to give Oprah Jerry his last thoughts. I hope you're still with us. Yes, he is blinking. I thought he was frozen there. Let me give you last words, Jerry. Talk to us about what it is that young men who are growing up and are seeing these things, what is it that they can do to try and be better men and not repeat what they see in their neighborhoods?
When you drive a vehicle, ladies and gentlemen, there are 3 areas that help you to have a 360 view. There's the rear view mirror, the side view mirrors, and the windshield. And just the one thing that I want to talk about today in closing, the rear view mirror. Whatever appears in your rear view mirror needs to constantly be receding, be disappearing. And the question is, brah, why are you so angry? Ask yourself, you are a time bomb.
Yeah.
You are out of control. Everybody complains about the same thing, and yet you say, "Bayakusugela." How come? Is it your dad? Is it your mom? Is it the bullies? Is it whatever the reason or excuse? That is not a passport to making yourself the best version of yourself as a man. Get over it, bruh. Get over it. Man up and forgive the past and forgive all the toxic people in your life. Take yourself back to yourself and take a man to your generation, to your kids, to this community, one man at a time. We depend on you alone. And that's what my challenge to men individually out there.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Jerry Mofokeng, actor and activist. And in studio, Bongani Luvalo, CEO of the Cool Dads Foundation. Thank you for your contribution to this discussion. Siyabulela Jentile, the president of Not In My Name.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely invaluable advice from all of you here tonight. So thank you very much for making time for this important discussion. More news after the break.